listening to the Touch 'em Up podcast. I'm your host, Double M, and on today's episode, we have UFC Saudi Arabia, Adesanya versus Imavov preview, predictions, and breakdown. This card takes place at an early start time of 8 a.m. Central Standard Time for the prelims, taking place in Saudi Arabia, in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. You have a middleweight clash in the main event between the former multiple-time middleweight champion coming back after that defeat to the champion in Dricus du Plessis in Israel, the last stylebender Adesanya, taking on the surging top contender fighting out of Paris, France in Nassourdine Imavov. Imavov versus Adesanya. Adesanya versus Imavov. So without any further ado, let's get this started and step into the ring. All right, guys, we are back. First card back since UFC 311. Again, underestimating Merab Dvalishvili, where he had a close first couple rounds. Seemed like Umar probably got the first two, and then the machine just kept on trucking, and he ended up retaining his title as a 2-1 underdog. Let's talk about Bellator or PFL, since it's PFL now, no longer Bellator. Paul Hughes, I had a bet on him at plus 425 against Usman Nurmagomedov. I thought Hughes did enough to win 3 rounds, especially after the late point deduction. I don't know how you score that fight 4-1 for Nurmagomedov, and that's exactly how they would have scored it, aside from the judge who gave it a draw, if they took a point from Usman for a late low blow. And then considering the way that Paul Hughes fought in the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th round, even in the early rounds, he was really working the body, knees to the body, inside the clinch. He was really good with the dirty boxing, ripping those bolo punches to the body. And he had some good counters with the left hook. And, I'm not going to say that it was a complete one-sided beatdown from Paul Hughes. It wasn't. But this just kind of goes into the ideology of you have to beat the champion in order to win. And I guess like in certain cases, but I think at best case scenario, it's a draw. If you don't score it for Paul Hughes, you have to score it a draw. And having a plus 425 ticket on that fight, it really, rubbed me the wrong way, because I feel like we got that one taken from us. And we picked Paul Hughes as an underdog against AJ McGee. We picked him in the title fight against Nurmagomedov. I feel like we should have cashed both those tickets and not just one of them. But it is what it is. Can't sit here and cry over spilt milk. It already happened. But let's move on to this week's card. And we're going to start us off with the first fight up in the featherweight division between the Contender Series alum in Bogdan Grad taking on Lucas Alexander, who fights out of Fusion XL alongside his teammate in Mike Davis, who also fights on this card. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this fight, but I picked Bogdan Grad against Michael Aswell on the Contender Series. He did enter that fight, I believe, as a slight favorite or a slight underdog. It was kind of even money, I believe. And, Grad has really solid power, good flying knees, knocked out his opponents with spinning wheel kicks before, big clubbing overhands, big left hooks, big right hooks, and he has the power to put down Lucas Alexander. I mean, look at the last time we saw Alexander in the UFC. He got knocked out by Jeka Saragi after he tried to stand up off of like a balance issue, and when he went to get up off the floor, he got hit with a big shot and knocked out. That seems like kind of a fluky knockout to me, but I could see a similar thing happening here against Bogdan Grad. I think Grad could maybe catch him on his way up, or, catch him off the break in the clinch and land a big left hook or a right hand. But if this fight stays at range, I think it's Lucas Alexander's fight to win. He's much cleaner, much crisper, really solid use of the straight punches, and we saw that the straight punches were what gave Bogdan Grad a lot of trouble in his second Contender Series fight. And in the first Contender Series fight, he took on Tom Nolan, who, looked like a killer on the Contender Series and then comes into the UFC and, doesn't look that great, going life and death with Alex Reyes. So that kind of goes to show you, how good is Bogdan Grad. He gets knocked out by Tom Nolan, comes in against Michael Aswell, wins that fight in a gritty dog fight. I think the cardio advantage goes to Bogdan Grad. Midpoint of the second round into the third round, I think that his pace and pressure could probably break a guy who's much cleaner in Lucas Alexander. But I also think he could get clipped. He got hit with a lot of straight punches in that Michael Aswell fight. The jab and the 1-2 were the best shots of Michael Aswell. And I think Lucas Alexander's best shots aside from his brutal body kicks and the low kicks, is just the jab and the 1-2, the jab cross. I think those are his best punches, and he does have really solid body kicks. He has good low kicks. He moves around well. Doesn't have the best defense, but I don't think Bogdan Grad has the best defense either. He might just be a little bit more willing to get into brawls and get into exchanges, which is, like I said, what could win him the fight going into those later rounds. He could slow down Alexander after getting pieced up for like the first round, round and a half, slows him down, rips to the body, comes over the top, lands shots inside the clinch, and probably gets an attritional TKO if he does win this fight. But I'm going to side with the underdog in Lucas Alexander. I think that he's much cleaner than Bogdan Grad. I think he's going to be able to keep him at range and kind of keep him away from him. And I think he's going to be able to piece him up a little bit. Like, yeah, he lost to Joe Anderson Brito. I think Brito is severely underrated, and I know he lost to William Gomis, but you know, that is what it is. He's a little bit underrated in my opinion, and I don't think that's a bad loss. And then the Jekasaragi fight, that doesn't look great, but that was also a loss that I feel like it was kind of fluky, but it could translate into this fight where maybe Alexander's winning the fight, he's piecing him up, and then he slips up and leaves himself open and exposed and gets knocked out by Bogdan Grad. I think Bogdan Grad is a fighter who Lucas Alexander probably can beat and look good in doing so. I think the fight's going to be close, but I think the cleaner striker is going to be Alexander. I think he's going to rip those body kicks. I think that front stabbing snap kick or the teep kick to the body, the rear body kick, if Bogdan Grad goes southpaw, and just using the jab, keeping him at distance and kind of picking him apart. I think Lucas Alexander wins this fight. I'm going to go with Lucas Alexander to get a second round TKO over Bogdan Grad. I just think he's a little bit cleaner, a little bit too crisp for Bogdan. And like I said, it wouldn't surprise me if Grad, landed a big shot and put him down later on in the fight and pushed a pace that maybe Alexander couldn't keep up with. But I like what I've seen from Lucas Alexander. Even though he hasn't done much in the UFC, I think he's good enough to kind of out-technique and out-crisp Bogdan Grad. So give me Lucas Alexander, late second round TKO over Bogdan Grad. And now a fight that I'm actually really excited for. I can't believe it's this low on the card. It's a battle in the women's flyweight division between Jasmine Jasudavicius taking on Mayra Bueno Silva. Great fight, and I really think this is the fight where Jasmine shows that she's real and she's a contender in this division. I think Jasudavicius is going to break Mayra Bueno Silva, and I don't think it's going to be a submission this time. I think it's going to be a ground and pound TKO. The last two times that Jasudavicius has fought, I played the Jasudavicius sub round 2 and round 3 against Priscilla Cachoeira. Not against Fatima Klein, so I can't say the last two times, but 2 out of the last 3 fights, I played Jasudavicius sub 2-3 against Priscilla Cachoeira, and I played the same thing against Ariane Lipski or Ariane da Silva in her last fight. This girl keeps a pace and a pressure that not many can stay with in this division. And I know she hasn't fought the top of the heap, but I think this is going to be the example that she sets to the top of the division. I think Mayra Bueno Silva has the cleaner striking. I think she's the more powerful striker, but I don't see her knocking out Jasudavicius. And I mean, she could catch her with a guillotine with the wrestling and takedowns that Jasudavicius does employ, but Jasudavicius takedowns are mainly from that clinch position. Getting body to body, getting to the body lock, inside and outside trips, throwing her down, putting one hook in and landing ground and pound, getting to the back. I think her pace is going to slow down Mayra Bueno Silva. I think it's going to be similar to the Raquel Pennington fight, but I think instead of her surviving, I don't think she's going to survive 3 rounds with the pace of Jasudavicius. Now, I think Jasudavicius is going to get hit. I think she's going to get rocked. I think she's going to get maybe even cut up in this fight. She's going to have to take some big shots. But I just think that forward pressure and that pace, it's going to slow down Mayra Bueno Silva, who we've seen her cardio fade in the fight against Raquel Pennington. Now, that's 2 more rounds than this fight. But I don't really think anybody in this division puts the pace, output, the ground and pound, the takedowns like a Jasudavicius. I don't see anybody in this division having that forward pressure, that wrestling pace, that ground and pound, that activity. The key word for Jasudavicius is forward pressure and activity. Her activity is insane. She just gets on that gas and she keeps going, and she keeps going, and she keeps going. And you literally have to knock her out. Like, you got to hit her in the head with a brick to stop her. Now, she got pieced up by Tracy Cortez, And maybe this is another example of a levels fight where she's just not good enough to be at that top of the division. But I think that Jasudavicius is going to beat Mayra Bueno Silva. I'm a little upset that she's a 2-1 favorite. I thought maybe it was going to be a pick'em, and I expected Jasudavicius to be the underdog. I think she might have opened as an underdog, but she's no longer the underdog. She's a pretty heavy favorite. I do think Jasudavicius will break Mayra Bueno Silva. I think she will finish her, but I don't think it's a submission this time. I think it's a TKO. We've seen Mayra Bueno Silva get TKO'd in the past, and I think every time people expect it to be a ground and pound TKO, it ends up being a submission for Jasudavicius, usually that Darce choke that she caught her last two opponents in, or last two finished opponents in. But in this case, I think it's going to be just slowing her down, breaking her down, and just ground and pounding her until the ref pulls her off of her. I'm going to go with a third round ground and pound TKO for Jasmine Jasudavicius over Mayra Bueno Silva. Could I see it going to decision? Yes, but I think we already know that Mayra Bueno Silva has cardio issues, and she looked really good in the Macy Chiasson fight, and then she got cut, and the fight got stopped even though she was piecing her up and beating her up, looking very good. I think she's the much cleaner striker, but I just don't think she's going to be able to put down Jasmine Jasudavicius. I think she might rock her, might hurt her, but Jasmine's going to keep coming forward, and I think she will slow her down. She will sap that cardio. She will start to get those takedowns easier and easier, and I think she gets to the mount, flattens her out, and ground and pounds her until the ref pulls her off. I'm going to go Jasmine Jasudavicius via third round ground and pound TKO over Mayra Bueno Silva to vault herself in to that top 5 in the division. I think this is another standout performance, and I think she looks good doing it. Up next, you've got a battle in the lightweight division between Fares, Smile Killer Ziam, taking on Mike Beast Boy Davis. This is a great fight, really good fight, but let me tell you something. I'm a little surprised at how many people are picking Fares Ziam to win this fight. Mike Davis opened up minus 250. Last time I checked, he's minus 148. I don't get it. Now, I'm not saying that I think Fares Ziam is a bad fighter. He's not a bad fighter at all. Very clean, crisp striking, good takedown defense. We've seen him showcase his grappling against Matt Favola in certain spots where he was able to get his back. He was able to put those hooks in. Almost locked up a rear naked choke. He almost got caught in a guillotine, a mounted guillotine, and was able to get out of it. But I'm going to be honest, I just think Mike Davis is on a different level than Fares Ziam. I think that he's the better grappler. I think he's much better from the top position. I think he flows to positions better, from mount to side control to taking the back, to putting in the hooks and looking to set up submissions. He's a very talented grappler. We saw it in the Vyacheslav Borshchev fight, and we saw it in the Natan Levy fight where he was able to get that arm triangle choke submission in the second round. And then if you go back and you look at the beginning of the Natan Levy fight, he walked him down, stayed calm, stayed patient, and just banged him with a right hand and dropped him. It could have been a TKO in that first round. I mean, it was a clean right hand. Pretty much the first strike that he threw, he dropped him with. I like the calmness of Mike Davis. I like his footwork. I like his movement. He's not afraid to get into exchanges. Now, staying at kickboxing range against a guy like Ziam, it could give you a lot of trouble. I mean, Ziam is a clean, crisp, technical kickboxer. And I think a lot of people who are playing Ziam in this spot are expecting him to be able to keep the distance and range and just pick apart Mike Davis. Pick apart Mike Davis as he comes forward. I don't think it's going to be that easy, and I think Davis is a lot stronger. I think he's going to be able to close the distance. I think he will land strikes of his own at range. I mean, he trained at the famed Customato gym, now training out of Fusion XL, which we talked about earlier with Lucas Alexander. I mean, I think Mike Davis is the better all-around fighter. I think he has the better jiu-jitsu. I think he has the better wrestling. I think he has the better grappling. I think Ziam is the cleaner, crisper, more technical striker, but I don't think Davis is too far behind, and I think there's a big power difference from Mike Davis compared to Ziam. I know Ziam knocked out Matt Favola with that, knee off the cage where he turned inside the clinch and then framed off and kneed him in the head. Brutal knockout, and I'm not going to discredit for Ziam. He moves well, good low kicks, good jab cross hook low kick, good hook low kick. Very good at keeping the distance in range. And the distance in range is going to be the hardest thing for Davis to cross in this fight, is crossing those planes and cutting off that distance. But I think he can do it. And I think once he gets in close, I think he's got better boxing. I think he's the more powerful striker. And I think he's got the much better wrestling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's not just a good wrestler who doesn't go for submissions. He's calm, he's patient, he knows how to flow from position to position. He knows how to get to that top position and look for submissions as well. And whether it's an arm triangle, whether it's a rear naked choke, he's always staying patient and flowing from position to position on the mat. And he's a very calm fighter on the feet as well. I like Beast Boy here. I like Beast Boy. I think you can tell. And I'm going with Mike Beast Boy Davis to win this fight by decision. I'm going to go Mike Davis, 29-28 unanimous decision. I could see a finish from Davis in this fight as well. I think he can break a guy like Ziam. I really do. I think he's just a better fighter. And I wouldn't be surprised. Well, actually, I would be surprised if Ziam caught him and knocked him out. But Ziam is a clean, crisp striker, and that's where he wants the fight to be. But I don't think he's going to be able to keep it at the range that he wants. So give me Mike Davis to win this fight, 29-28 unanimous decision over for Ziam to kill his smile a little bit. All right, up next is a battle in the lightweight division between Abdul Kareem Selwady taking on Bolaji Oki. This is a tough fight to break down for me. Originally, I was on the Selwady side. Then I started watching some more tape, and I could see a case for Bolaji Oki to win this fight as well. I think the fighter with more activity over 15 minutes is Abdul Kareem Selwady. I think the fighter who gets hit more, who gets clipped up, is also Abdul Kareem Selwady. I think the fighter with the better grappling in this fight is Abdul Kareem Selwady. I think the fighter with the cleaner, sharper, crisper striking is Bolaji Oki. But looking at this fight on paper, I think it's kind of a coin flip. I could see either fighter winning this. If I didn't see Selwady get clipped up so much against Loik Rajabov, I think I would be much more confident on the side of the underdog in Selwady. But I'm not saying Bolaji Oki has the power of a Loik Rajabov, but he's a cleaner striker than Radzhabov. He stays at distance. He stays at range. He measures very well. Good jabs, good 1-2s. He's got a very clean jab, and I think the jab could kind of dictate the fight against Abdul Kareem Selwady. But I also think that the activity and the awkwardness of Selwady with the stance switches, the inside and outside low kicks, the 1-2s, the hooks, the uppercuts, I could see him hurting Bolaji Oki in an exchange as well. I think this fight is pretty much 50-50 in my opinion. I think it could go either way. I think, like I said, the cleaner strikers, Bolaji Oki. I think the fighter with the better wrestling and better takedowns is Abdul Kareem Selwady. I think the fighter with more volume is Selwady. I think the fighter who probably has durability issues is Selwady, but Bolaji Oki, he is a finisher, but he kind of point fights until he hurts you, and then he'll step on the gas and beat you up a little bit. Oki really sticks behind that jab, the low kicks, the calf kicks, the 1-2 down the middle, moving around, check hook, always trying to measure the distance and range, but sometimes he can get put on the back foot and not have enough volume himself, which is where I think Selwady can take over. Maybe he has more volume, more combinations, more output, and he slows down Oki, but then Oki cracks him with a big counter and hurts him. Like I said, I think this fight is 50-50, but I'm going to go with the underdog. I'm going to go with my gut instinct, my original pick. I'm going to go with Abdul Kareem Selwady. I took him against Loik Rajabov, and I'm going to take him here again against Bolaji Oki. I just feel like he has more ways to win. I think he probably lands more numbers in terms of the striking. I think he probably gets hurt at one point, but maybe he can survive and get a takedown and work his grappling. I think he wins a decision. I'm going to go Abdul Kareem Selwady, 29-28, split decision for this one. I think it goes the distance. I could see a finish on either side, though. This is a really tough fight to call, a really tough fight to predict. But I'm going to go with the underdog in what I believe to be a 50-50 fight. So give me Abdul Kareem Selwady, 29-28, split decision over Bolaji Oki. All right, up next is a battle in the featherweight division between Kaan Ofli, coming off of the Ultimate Fighter, taking on Muhammad Naimov. 11-3 for Naimov, 12-3-1 for Ofli. I really think that this is going to be a showcase for Muhammad Naimov. I think Kaan Ofli is not a bad fighter. He has good grappling, good forward pressure. If he gets a lot of takedowns against Naimov and zaps his energy, I think he could get a submission. I think that's kind of the way that Ofli is going to win, is just by pushing forward, getting in the face of Naimov, pushing him against the cage, getting takedowns, working from the top position, and eventually just ground and pounding him until he gives up his neck, or maybe he grabs an arm triangle from the top and makes Naimov quit. I think Naimov does have quit in him, but I also think that this fight is kind of a gimme fight for Naimov. I think that the striking on the feet isn't really close. I think Naimov's faster. I think he's crisper. I think he's cleaner. And I think he's much better. I think he has decent enough takedown defense to not get taken down and controlled by Ofli. But in the midpoint of the second round through the third round, I think the cardio of Ofli might be what takes over. But I also don't think that Ofli has the best cardio himself. I think both of these guys kind of slow down the longer that the fights go. I think Naimov's is more due to his explosiveness and power that he generates in his strikes and how he kind of puts everything into everything that he does early on. And I think with Ofli, it's kind of him just getting hit, getting cracked, moving around a lot, going for takedowns, maybe getting them stuffed, and then he starts to slow down as well. I think that this fight isn't particularly close. I think, like I said, if Ofli wins, it's probably a late submission. Maybe he gets a takedown on Naimov, survives the early storm, starts to land his own strikes, gets him up against the cage, gets takedowns, and eventually locks up a submission, or maybe even a ground and pound. But I think it would more be a sub than a ground and pound TKO. But we did see Nathaniel Wood kind of put it on Naimov late and piece him up on the feet, but I don't think Ofli is at the level of a Nathaniel Wood. With this one, though, I am going to go with the favorite. I'm going to go with Muhammad Naimov, or Muhammad Jean Naimov, to get the job done here. I'm going to go with the second round TKO. I think he's going to hurt Ofli, drop him, jump on him with ground and pound, and finish him off. So give me Muhammad Naimov, second round TKO. I don't necessarily think this fight is particularly close, but late in the fight is where I think Ofli could make something happen and maybe lock up a submission. But the pick is going to be Muhammad Naimov, second round TKO. Up next, you have a battle in the bantamweight division between Said Nurmagomedov taking on Vinicius Lokdog Oliveira. This is a close fight, man. Very interesting fight. One of the most interesting fights on the card. And, Said is going to be favored by a lot of guys. A lot of people are going to pick that in and out, lead leg heavy attack with his kickboxing and the solid front chokes that he has with a guillotine or locking up a ninja choke. And don't get me wrong, I think all of those parts of Nurmagomedov's game can give Oliveira a lot of trouble. I think if Nurmagomedov is able to measure the distance and control the range, then he probably could pick apart a guy like Oliveira. Inside low kick, outside low kick, lead head kick, front kicks to the body, long teep kicks to keep him away, 1-2s down the middle when Oliveira tries to close the distance. When he tries to close the distance, duck under, get some takedowns, and rinse and repeat. Nurmagomedov is like a dog on a bone for that front headlock if his opponent tries to stand up reckless. Kind of like Islam against Renato Moicano, where he tried to stand up and he just front headlocked him, Darce choked him, and that was it. I think Nurmagomedov more is a ninja choke guy than a Darce choke guy, even though they're pretty similar. It's just a front naked choke compared to a rear naked choke. That's basically what a ninja choke is. And I think the awkwardness of Oliveira is what gives a guy who's such a technician like Nurmagomedov issues on the feet. I think that weird low kick, the weird inside and outside low kicks, the long punches, it could leave him open for counters. Don't get me wrong. Nurmagomedov could snipe Oliveira coming in. He could snipe him on the way out, just picking him apart, front kick to the face, moving around, 1-2, moving around, check hook right hand. I mean, he could land all those combinations on a guy like Oliveira, who fights with his hands down low, who kind of slips and rolls with shots and comes back with counters. But I think that this Oliveira guy has something to offer the UFC's bantamweight division, and I think that this is going to be a showcase fight for him. I don't think it's going to be an easy fight. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to sit here and say I think Said's going to get blown out of the water. I think he's going to get destroyed. No, but I think that pressure and the awkwardness of Oliveira is going to leave some openings against Said Nurmagomedov. I think he's going to leave himself open to get hit with some big shots. I think that the later the fight goes, I almost think that the cardio of Oliveira is going to be at a higher level than Nurmagomedov. I think that he's going to be able to keep up a pace at the midpoint of the second round into the third round and beyond that I don't think Nurmagomedov's necessarily going to be able to keep up, because I think for the most part we're going to see Nurmagomedov on the back foot. He's going to be on the back foot countering, trying to catch Oliveira coming in with the hands down low and the awkwardness and the big looping hooks and the overhands and the weird awkward uppercuts. And I think he's going to start to walk down Nurmagomedov, and it's going to be hard for the first 7.5 minutes. But past that, I think that's where Oliveira is going to kind of take over. I see it being similar in some regards to Paul Hughes and Usman Nurmagomedov from this past weekend, where the inside and outside low kicks, the head kicks, moving around, 1-2s, and then he starts to slow down. Maybe he gets a takedown early, but Oliveira works his way back up to the feet. He defends the submissions, and he starts to put Nurmagomedov on that back foot, starts to land his combinations more, starts to work that body with knees, with that front kick to the body, the snap kick, the knees to the body, ripping uppercuts, touch, rip with the hooks and uppercuts to the body. And I think he slows down Nurmagomedov enough, and I think he does enough to either finish him late, but I'm not going to bank on a finish with Saeed. I think he's going to win the second and the third round, and I think he's going to win a decision. So I'm again going to go with an underdog here. I'm going to go with the plus 164, I believe, underdog in Lokdog, Vinicius Oliveira. I'm going to lock in Lokdog against Saeed Nurmagomedov. I think that his weird style, the pressure, it's going to slow down Saeed. And I don't think Vinicius is going to win the first round, but I don't necessarily see Nurmagomedov finishing him. I think if you're banking on a finish for Saeed, it's probably a ninja choke. So you might as well just go on BetMGM and bet Saeed Nurmagomedov by ninja choke. I'll probably do the same thing if I can find the number for it when it comes out, just to hedge, just in case. But I think Oliveira's awkwardness, the forward pressure, the cardio, I think it's going to slow down Nurmagomedov, and it could be a late finish, but I'm going to go with a decision. Give me 29-28 unanimous decision for Vinicius Lokdog Oliveira as an underdog against Saeed Nurmagomedov. I'm going with Oliveira. I think he can get this done, and I think this kid has a lot to offer this division. Up next in the heavyweight division, you have a battle between Sergei Pavlovich taking on Biggie Boy Jairzinho Rozenstruik. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this fight because there's not much to break down. The fighter with more power is Pavlovich. The cleaner, crisper, more technical kickboxer is Jairzinho Rozenstruik. This fight's a coin flip. Whoever lands first, I think, puts their opponent away. And I could honestly see it going either way. I think that Pavlovich is going to just look to come forward and land a big one on the chin of Rozenstruik. We've seen Rozenstruik get stopped by Alexander Volkov. We've seen him get rocked and hurt in fights before. But he's also been fighting a lot cleaner, a lot crisper, a lot more technical. He did that mainly against Tai Tuivasa and was able to win that fight by a decision when most people didn't expect it to even go the distance. With this one, though, I could see Rozenstruik using that inside low kick, using the check hook, the little inside low kick check hook to catch Pavlovich coming in, the 1-2 down the middle, and just moving around and picking apart Pavlovich. I don't think Pavlovich is a good mixed martial artist. I just think this guy hits very hard, and he falls in love with his power. Now, if we see a more refined, more defined version of a Sergei Pavlovich, a more well-rounded guy who looks for takedowns, uses his wrestling, then I think Pavlovich definitely has a chance to win. And obviously he has a chance to win on the feet. He can land a big shot. He can put down Rozenstruik. He can knock him out, of course. But again, man, these fights are hard to predict this week. These are fights that could literally go either way in most cases. But with this one, I think the last three fights on the card are the hardest fights to predict on the whole card. But in this case, I'm going to go with Rozenstruik because I just can't trust Pavlovich anymore. Maybe he comes in, maybe Pavlovich looks great and gets a first-round KO. 100% could see it happening. Wouldn't shock me at all. But I've gone with Pavlovich the last few times, and it hasn't gone well. Now, it's been against Volkov, and it's been against Tom Aspinall. Both, one being the heavyweight champion of the world, in my opinion, and one being a guy who's probably going to fight for that heavyweight title next, or maybe one more fight to become a contender. I'm going to go with Rozenstruik. I think Rozenstruik's going to catch him coming in and put him down. And if he doesn't knock him out, if the fight goes late, I definitely have Rozenstruik late. I think he uses his range uses those inside and outside kicks, uses the jab and the check hook to maintain the distance and kind of just point fights his way to a decision. Give me Jairzinho Rozenstruik to win this fight 29-28, unanimous decision, not a knockout. I think he point fights and wins a kickboxing match against the pretty much punching power only Sergei Pavlovich. So 29-28, unanimous decision for Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Maybe 30-27. I think he probably sneakily goes the distance and outpoints Pavlovich. All right, next fight up is in the middleweight division between Shara Bullet Magomedov, 15-0 as a professional mixed martial artist, I believe 15 or 16-0, taking on the former welterweight moving up to 185 pounds in Michael Venom Paige. Great fight. One of the best fights on the card and one of the hardest fights to predict, in my opinion. I believe this fight is only 3 rounds. We know that the main event's obviously going to be a 5-rounder, but is the co-main event 3 or 5 rounds? Let's see. The co-main event is 5 rounds. Oh, no. 3 5-minute rounds. Okay. So 15-0 for Shara Magomedov, 22-3 for Michael Venom Paige. MVP coming off of that loss to Ian Gary via decision, where some people believe that Michael Venom Paige won the fight. You know, and we haven't seen him since. Shara Magomedov's coming off that double spinning back fist knockout in the 3rd round against Armen Petrosyan. Now, a lot of people may look at both of these guys and compare Michael Venom Paige to Armen Petrosyan. There's no comparison. I'm just being honest with you. The speed that Michael Venom Paige can close the gap with is unlike any person in the UFC. I mean, he's just different. Now, he beat up Kevin Holland. That was a fight where we picked MVP to beat Kevin Holland. He came in as an underdog, and he got the job done. You know, we picked him again as an underdog against Ian Machado Gary, and he landed some big right hands. He landed some big shots, but he got out grappled. Now, I've expected Shara Magomedov to go for his grappling and submissions in multiple fights, and he still, to this day, will not even attempt shooting a takedown. So I'm not expecting it in this fight. I might play it because, you know, the one time you don't play the Shara submission, he ends up getting it. So maybe I'll throw something on Shara by sub round 2, round 3. But I think it's going to be mainly a kickboxing match. And I do worry that it's in the middleweight division. You know, Shara is a pretty big guy. MVP is not the biggest welterweight. He's tall and long, but he's not really a big guy. And I feel like the power might be the biggest difference. But I also think MVP is so much faster than Shara, and I think he also has a lot of power that people may, you know, discredit him for. They might not think that he has a lot of power. But when he closes that distance with the 1-2, man, this guy has a ton of power. Now, we've seen MVP get knocked out before. He got knocked off balance with that inside kick and then got hit with a bolo uppercut from hell by Douglas Lima. And we've seen him get taken down and grinded out by Logan Storley, I believe, was able to take him down and kind of beat him up. But again, I'm not expecting takedowns from Shara because we've expected it in other fights, and he just stands and trades with him. So in this one in particular, I think, again, this is 50-50. Now, maybe it's like 60-40 because it's at 185 and not 170. Maybe you have to lean a little bit more towards Shara being the bigger guy. And Shara fights similar to an MVP, you know, in and out, lead leg kick, lead head kick, you know, spinning wheel kicks, you know, spinning back fists, flying knees, elbows. He'll throw everything. MVP fights, you know, in and out, side stance, in and out, jab, hook right hand, 1-2, in and out, lead head kick, lead side kick to the body. And I do worry about the leg kicks for Shara. I think Shara is going to target that lead leg and try to knock him off balance and try to catch him with something crazy. I could see a similar situation to the Douglas Lima knockout in this one, with Shara like side kicking his lead leg, and then as he stands up, he head kicks him, or as he stands up, he lands a straight punch and knocks him out. That wouldn't shock me one bit. I think this fight is going to be close, but I think the better technician and the faster fighter, even though he's getting older, is Michael Venom Paige. And I don't expect Shara to grapple. If I knew he was going to grapple, I would pick Shara. But we don't know, and he usually doesn't use it. So I'm going to go with MVP. I'm going to go with Michael Venom Paige. Now, I didn't know until I looked at it today that this, you know, was MVP moving up in weight. maybe the weight cut's getting harder with him getting older, but I still think he's faster than Shara. I still think that even though Shara Bullet is competitive in the kickboxing, I don't necessarily think he's going to out-kickbox Michael Venom Page. And, Ian Gary didn't out-kickbox him, but he out-grappled him. And I don't see Shara using his wrestling. I don't see him using his grappling. And I think MVP can kind of either knock Shara out coming in with a big shot or win a decision. I've picked a lot of decisions, man. I feel like some of these other YouTubers who are too afraid to pick finishes in fights, but I'm going to go with Michael Venom Page by decision. I think he outpoints Shara Magomedov. I think he catches him coming in, lands some big shots, and, this is a big test for Shara. MVP might not be the greatest test, considering other fighters and considering other people who break down the sport, but I think MVP can just outpoint him, pick him apart, catch him stepping in, moving in and out, jab, 1-2, moving in and out, and making it hard for Shara to do much of anything. So I'm going to go with a 29-28 unanimous decision. No, you know what? Since we're in Saudi, I'm going to go split. A 29-28 split decision from Michael Venom Page. Now, with it being in Saudi, maybe he has to get a finish. Because, the judges are going to be geared towards other people, So I'm going to go MVP 29-28 split decision over Shara Magomedov. I think MVP's too crisp. I think he's too fast. And even in moving up in weight, I still think that the speed is going to be too much for Shara. I think Shara's going to land some good stuff. I think there's going to be some good exchanges. But this fight might be boring. It might not be the most exciting fight. It might be like the Ian Gary fight where it's very point fighting in and out, tit for tat, but without Shara grappling, and I think that leans me more towards MVP. So give me Michael Venom Page. Give me MVP 29-28 split decision over Shara Bullet Magomedov. And now we get to the main event of the evening in the middleweight division between the former champion in Israel, the last style bender, Adesanya, taking on Nassourdine Imavov. If you gave me this fight 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I would say Adesanya is going to beat the shit out of Nassourdine Imavov. I would say that he's probably going to knock him out, probably pick him apart, beat him up. And don't get me wrong, that could happen here. But to be honest with you, even if it's a straight kickboxing match, I still don't have as much confidence in Adesanya in beating Imavov as I did a few years ago. Now, that's not rocket science. I think everybody would kind of agree with that. Some people are going to say, oh, his boxing looked a lot better in the Dricus fight. And I will agree with you. I think his hands looked better. He was touching and ripping the body a lot better, coming up top, moving in and out. It did look like the Izzy of old at certain points. But Adesanya is a guy who looks great when he's in control. But the minute he starts to get hit, that's when he starts to fall off the tracks. And I'm not talking about getting dropped or getting rocked. When he starts to get touched, he starts to fall apart. And we've seen it in multiple fights. We saw it against Sean Strickland. After he got rocked in that first round and almost finished, he was done for the rest of the fight. We saw it in the Alex Pereira and Adesanya fight the first time. Adesanya rocked him with that measure to the right hand and then the left hook. And he was, using his wrestling, using his grappling. And then once Pereira landed that big shot, he hurt him and he wasn't able to recover. But that's obviously Alex Pereira. That's different. And even against Dricus, when Dricus landed those big shots, Adesanya was kind of running away. He was turning his head. He was giving up his back, running against the fence. And I think it's because those guys who are so good at managing distance, so good at managing range, so good at picking their opponents apart, when you can crash that distance, kind of like a Saeed Nurmagomedov. Now, I'm not comparing Adesanya and Saeed, but, similar styles. When you're able to crash that distance, when you're able to close that pocket and pressure those guys, that's when they start to fall apart. And we've seen it multiple times with Adesanya, even in fights that he's won. He has kind of fallen apart on that back foot. Now, you're going to maybe bring up the Kelvin Gastelum fight. Well, that was a war. They went back and forth. That was the Izzy of old. I don't think Izzy's the same fighter anymore. And I'm not disrespecting him. I love Izzy. Early Izzy, I was a huge fan of Adesanya early in his career, but it's just not the same Izzy that it was before. I think Imavov can use his wrestling, even though we know that Adesanya has been working on his takedown defense, been working on his wrestling. I think Imavov can use his takedowns. I think Imavov can use his wrestling. We might see Izzy get a takedown or two here. It wouldn't shock me if Adesanya got a takedown or two and then Imavov was able to work his way back up. But I think Imavov's going to use his wrestling. I think he's going to use his takedowns. I think that he is going to be more competitive on the feet with Adesanya than people are expecting. I think he's going to have better boxing than Adesanya in this fight. I think he's going to use his jab, that 1-2, ripping to the body. And the one thing I like about Imavov is if he hurts you or rocks you, he doesn't rush it. He's not going to be like Alex Pereira in the second fight where he hurt Izzy and then he got drawn in, dropped his hands, and got knocked out. He's going to use that lead hand to measure, but he's going to close the distance. Jab, jab, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, knee to the body. Measure, pop, pop. He's going to methodically pick his shots and start to land shots on Adesanya the later that the fight goes. And knowing that he can be competitive in the striking while also being able to use his wrestling and grappling and maybe even, take down Adesanya, push him against the cage, hold him there, use some trips, land some ground and pound, threaten with submissions, I think Imavov wins this fight. Now, I don't think he's going to finish Adesanya, but I would not be surprised if he got a late TKO here. If he was able to hurt Adesanya and kind of rip to the body, rip back up top in like the 3rd, 4th, or 5th. Like Imavov KO 3, 4, 5. It's talking to me a little bit because I could see a late TKO for Imavov. I also know that Imavov doesn't have the best cardio in a 5-round fight. And that might be what pushes more people back towards Adesanya. Maybe Adesanya can slow down Imavov enough, work in the body, those front kicks, the rear kicks to the body. I think the southpaw left kick from Adesanya and the right calf kick are going to be the biggest weapons he uses in this fight. And I think Imavov's cardio, we've seen it slow down in 3-rounders. I can't imagine that it's going to be great in 5-rounders, but he was able to put it on Cannonier in that 4th round and pick up the pace and start to land bigger shots. And we did see him slow down in that 3-rounder against Brendan Allen, but that was also a fight where he got taken down and controlled by a much better grappler in the 1st round. I don't think we're going to see that from Adesanya, so I think his cardio is going to carry a little bit better into that 3rd, 4th, and 5th than it did in that 3-rounder against Allen because Allen got the takedown and was able to get a lot of control time and look for submissions. I'm going to go with Nassourdine Imavov. I'm not going to hold it back anymore. I'm going to go with Nassourdine Imavov via a decision. But again, it wouldn't shock me if he got a late TKO. You know what? Nope. I'm switching it. Because the more I'm talking about it, I'm thinking about it. Give me Nassourdine Imavov to defeat Israel Adesanya via a 4th round TKO and really vault himself into that title contention. Now, do I think he beats a Duplessis? No. But I think Imavov beats Adesanya. I'm going to go with a 4th round TKO for Nassourdine Imavov. It would not shock me if he wins a decision. That was my original pick. So do with that what you may. If you're going to play it, just play money line. But yeah, I'm going Imavov. I think he is hungry, and I think he has a well-rounded enough game to give Adesanya problems. And I think he wins this fight. So give me Nassourdine, the sniper, Imavov, to defeat Israel Adesanya via a 4th round TKO in the main event of UFC Saudi Arabia. All right, that's going to be it for my preview, predictions, and breakdown on this card. Leave me your thoughts, your predictions, your favorite bets in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit a flying knee into a double spinning back fist on the notification bell to catch all future uploads from the premier mixed martial arts and pro wrestling channel on YouTube. I'm your host, Double M, and I'm out. Enjoy the fights this weekend.